Hi Year 7. You might remember before half term we were working on verbs. I'm going to continue working on verbs with you this week. We're going to try and find some more interesting things that we can do with verbs, apart from simply show past, present and future. Now, look at this story. I could tell this story very simply using the simple past tense. Brian spotted an object on the ground. Brian picked it up. Brian saw that it was a key. Brian put the key in a lock. Brian unlocked the door. Nice and easy. Okay. Except it's a fairly dry and boring way to tell a story using the simple past and nothing else. And it doesn't give us very much extra information. Your story could seem very dry if you only use the simple past. And what would you do if you wanted to express an idea like this? There's Brian before he even saw the key. And what's happening? Well, he's walking. Now you could say Brian walked down the road, Brian spotted a key. But that's not really precise enough, because if you look at the picture you can see he's clearly moving. And so Brian was walking down the road. That's something that was happening when the next thing happened. And it could also get a bit awkward if you wanted to try and tell the story in a different order. See, what comes out of the door is a lion that eats Brian. Now, if you wanted to start with, say, something in the middle and work your way back, you might want to say something along the lines that Brian was being eaten by a lion because he had opened the lion's door. So moving backwards and forwards around in time and showing one thing happening at the same as another thing requires a little bit more ambitious use of verbs. It's a little bit more complicated than what we've been talking about up to now. Let's have a look at this very old Batman and Robin comic strip. Here's another similar example. Batgirl sneaked into the Batcave. She heard voices. The motion sensor was activated. Well, all of those past tense events happen in a fairly clear sequence. It's not very complicated. But you could make the story just a little bit more interesting if you were writing about something that was happening and then added information to show that something else had happened earlier. If you look at this example, Batgirl was sneaking into the Batcave, so that's happening when she set off the alarm. So two things happening at the same time. And look, she had activated the motion sensor. So we are bouncing around in the flow of time, saying that some things have finished happening and other things are going on simultaneous to others. So it could get in a bit of a tangle, and those of you who perhaps don't have English as your first language might find this sort of thing a bit scary. But it gets easier with practice, and you probably understand it pretty well when you hear it. You may be just a little bit cautious about wanting to write in this way yourself. So here we see Brian being eaten by the lion again. Wouldn't it be nice to say, Brian had been walking along the road? Or Brian was walking down the road one day when he had seen a key? Or even better, Brian had been eaten by a lion because he had foolishly opened the door to the lion's house. So all of these opportunities to make the story more interesting come about because of something called aspect. Here's the simple past again. Bane defeated Batman. He dropped him onto the Batcave floor. Well, the sequence of events is here very clear because you can match them to the pictures. And as long as the story is being told in a very basic way with things happening in a very predictable order, you don't need to use different aspects. You can make do with the simple past. But doesn't it read so much more interestingly if you can start to show what's finished and what hasn't finished? Here we say Spider-Man had taken his mask off. We say that is in the perfect aspect because we know that that's something that he had done and that it was finished. And of course he had to do that, otherwise Mary Jane was going to end up with a mouthful of mask and she would never have snogged him. So that had to happen and be finished before that could happen. The word had tells us that the action is completed, that the mask is off. And that makes it a little bit clearer for us when we understand the story, when we read or listen to the story. We know what's done and dusted and what's still going on. So we only need the simple past here to say that Mary Jane kissed him. But the word had added to this sentence shows us that something has been finished. We're getting extra information, and that's what aspect does. It gives us extra information about a verb. This here is just the simple past tense, and it's being combined with this example of the perfect past tense, the past perfect. The word had shows us that the action has been completed, finished, done and dusted. And that's as far as I want to go with that for this week. Later we will go back to looking a little bit more at what's called the imperfect aspect, but I'm going to save that for next week.